Who was there at the cross when Jesus was crucified? That's what we're going to find out today in John 19. I believe that the account in John of the crucifixion is one of the shortest, but this has been a few very touching chapters. Remember, John writes this much later, so he knows these other gospels are in place. He knows what was already written by the other gospel writers, and so he's cleaning up, writing a very personal message about what happens. And this chapter pulls no punches. It's the culmination of this entire journey that we've been following along with in the Gospels. John sees Jesus confront religious leaders, love friends deeply, love his disciples, educate them, speak about the kingdom that's not of this world. John has been there this whole time, and John sees what happened on the cross. We left off where Jesus was murdered, arrested, questioned, mocked, and now we're going to see what happens at the end. This is hard. This is really hard to watch in all of this when we're reading along. But Pilate then at this point has Jesus flogged. This was a brutal act. The whips had barbs on them. There's whole museums that show basically what the crown of thorns and the robe would have looked like and what these barbs look like. The crown of thorns was very big thorns, and it's not just a crown like we think of, a king right now wearing a crown, which would just be a band around the head. It was a full hat kind of thing. Pilate has him brutally beaten in this way. They were mocking him and accusing him, and this is a terrible place. I got to see that place where it supposedly took place in Jerusalem as well. And then he brings Jesus out to the crowd to show Jesus was brutally punished. He was in his crown of thorns. He was in his robe of purple, and he has the beat marks on him for sure. It always strikes me about the Shroud of Turin is the man that is in the Shroud of Turin, which I think was probably Jesus, had, I forgot, hundreds of injury marks on him. And this is horrible. This is horrible. But the point is that Pilate now brings him out and says, "Behold the man. Here he is. Here's Jesus. Look what I did to him." This is in Latin, ecce homo. I probably am saying this wrong. But this was the convent where this happened that I stayed in at Jerusalem. There is a convent of nuns. It was the only women's bathroom I could find in the entire city of Jerusalem. I got to stay there, and they had an upper kind of patio area on the top where my friends and I would spend our time. During the evenings, we could look out on the entire old city of Jerusalem. It was beautiful. And a lot of times I would walk down there and see this place, and I thought, gosh, what they did to him. And then I'm sitting there thinking, you don't believe in Jesus. You don't even believe necessarily he even was a real person. What in the world are you sitting there thinking about Jesus? I spent some time when I was at the conference last week with a Catholic priest and his friend who studied in the seminary and was closely tied to the Catholic Church and knew a lot about it. He was actually in Israel, I think the year after I was there. And I told him, I said, I feel like I got hijacked by God, that I'm an atheist. I'm going to Israel. I'm supposed to be on this dig because I thought archaeology was cool and Indiana Jones and all that. And what I ended up doing was walking constantly in the footsteps of Jesus, going up and down the Kidron Valley, being in the Mount Olives, being in the temple area, being in the way of the cross constantly. And then when I wasn't there, I was in Jericho. I was in Old Testament places. I was in Megiddo. I felt, like I said, I got set up by God. And so Pilate now is trying really hard to not put Jesus to death, which is interesting because the Romans were not shy about putting people to death. They did have some sort of Roman justice in them because they wanted things to stay calm. He struggles. He keeps saying, I find no guilt in him. I find no, should I execute your king? And they're yelling more and more, crucify him, crucify him. And they just will not let this go. And he questions Jesus some more to try to desperately get out of this entire situation. Don't you know who I am? Don't you know I have the power to put you to death? And Jesus says, you would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. Pilate's not in charge here. What's happening here is part of a larger divine plan. You're playing a part in it. You have free will to act or not act, but, the authority is from God himself. And the leaders are now starting to invoke Caesar. Well, if you don't put him to death, you're not loyal to Caesar. If you don't do this, he's declaring himself to be king. We have no kings but Caesar. Well, suddenly look who is all chummy with the Romans. Yes, so the temple structure is pretending to be good Roman citizens and love Caesar because they want Jesus put to death that much. So Pilate goes and decides to save his political career. He decides that whatever Roman justice is in him, the fact he sees nothing wrong, the fact he tries time and time to get Jesus not to be executed, he sits on the judgment seat in Aramaic called Golgotha, and it's technically the stone pavement, condemns Jesus to be crucified. Jesus carries his own cross. This is going to be the cross beam, not the up and down beam. That up and down beam is probably already there, waiting for these criminals. That cross beam that goes into the ground is already there, sitting at the site, waiting for them. And Jesus has two criminals on either side that he is going to be crucified with, and walks through the city of Jerusalem carrying the crossbeam. You can go there when you see it. This is where he fell the first time. This is where he fell the second time. This is called the Station of the Cross. And you can see each of the places. Like I said, every day I was in Jerusalem, I walked this path. I saw these stations, and I thought about this. This is where Jesus walked. And so they go out, they get to Golgotha. It's called the place of the skull. So it kind of looks like a skull in the rock. There were two places that it was sort of thought to be the location. One was Catholic and one was Protestant. And the Catholic one looks to be more accurate because it's in a proper location. This would have been someplace very public. It would have been on a road. Everyone going in and out would have seen it. And so the location probably was accurate of where this was. They crucify him. They put a sign above his head, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. It's written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. If you ever see the INRI, it is to represent that. That's where it comes from. And the chief priests are like, don't write that. Don't write that he's King of the Jews. He's not King of the Jews. They object to it. And Pilate says, I have written what I have written. That guy is a poet, right? I'm kind of curious that, like I said, there were thoughts that both Pilate and his wife became Christians after this happened. I kind of want to talk to that dude. I sort of want to know what kind of person he was. The soldiers then divide the garments of Jesus. It cast lots. It means gambled for it. A seamless tunic. And this fulfills the prophecy of Psalms 22:18. Early in the Old Testament, they divide my garments among them, and for my clothing, they cast lots. The idea is that everything that is happening within Jesus is being fulfilled, or is a fulfillment of what is said in the Old Testament. It's sobering to realize that Jesus hung on the cross naked. The ultimate humiliation, every dignity stripped away from him, every prophecy fulfilled in all of this. And it's the ultimate, like I said, supposed to be the humiliation. It's supposed to be a message from the Roman government. See what happens to you when you disobey Rome? This is what happens to you. At the foot of the cross stands his mother, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the wife of Clopas. There's too many Marys up there. We're going to find out more about Clopas coming up in Acts. And then the disciple whom Jesus loved. We think John is pointing himself out here. He's not naming himself as a matter of pride, but it is John. And John is the only one of the men, only one of the apostles and the disciples who is there. It's the women that are there. And if you were going to write a fake rendition of the end of Jesus, you wouldn't have put women there because they had no legal standing. They had no standing in the world at all, and they wouldn't have done it. So Jesus looks down, and what does he do? He thinks of his mother. He honors his mother more than anybody else. Woman, again, madam, it's a term of endearment and of honor. Behold your son, John. And to the disciple, John, behold your mother. Take care of her. Now, the question always comes in, why weren't Jesus' family there? Like I said, if you are Protestant, we believe that he had brothers, and James was one of his brothers. He becomes the archbishop of the Jerusalem church. Where were they? Why weren't they taking care of Mary? And why was Jesus giving and caring for his mother by giving him to John to be taken care of? People say, well, his siblings were not yet believers, or maybe this was a deeper spiritual act. An apostle has to take care of my mother. Either way, ensures that she's not left alone after Jesus goes. Then, knowing that everything was completed, Jesus says, I thirst. They offered him sour wine on a hyssop branch, so if you dunked cloth on a branch and then stuck it up by him, and people felt, again, that there was maybe potentially painkillers in there. And then he says, it is finished. He gives up his spirit. It's not taken from him. He's not murdered. He gave it up. He did this. And the Greek word here is telestai, which means completed, perfected. It's the perfect ending. The idea is that we are paid in full. The debt is paid in full. This means that this work is accomplished. That was decided from the very beginning of time as being the way of saving mankind. All of the prophecies, all the things that happened along the way, all these paths, crooked paths, straight paths, all this brings it to this point where we have finally paid in full, completed. If I went downtown and I paid my property taxes and they gave me a receipt, it could say telestai on it because I have completed my payment. It is finished. Not as important as this one. So because it's Sabbath, the Jews requested that the crucified men's have their legs broken to hasten the death. There's like a little ledge that was there, and they stood on it, and now you can't. They can't prop themselves back up because their legs are broken. I'm sorry, this is so hard. So they break the legs of the other two that are on the cross, and they come to Jesus and they find him dead already, which is unusual because usually this is a long-suffering, painful kind of death. One of the soldiers takes and pierces his side, and blood and water pours out of him. The interesting thing I found is, I saw one thing that said, well, this is why blood and water would come out. This is probably where they pierced and this is how it happened. But, I kind of am a philosophical thinker, and I was kind of thinking of the point. We've talked about water, the living water. You have to be born of water. Baptism is of water and blood. The blood of Jesus Christ as a saving gift. Our communion is based on that. And what comes out? Blood and water. That's really it. And then John then goes and says that he testifies to all this so that we may believe. The point of this entire book, prophecy is fulfilled. And the prophecy that it says, not one of his bones will be broken, and they will look on him whom they pierced. This is prophecy from the very beginnings of time. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus step forward as two secret disciples, both of them probably in the Sanhedrin. Joseph of Arimathea, a rich fellow who has money. Nicodemus probably wasn't doing too terribly either. He was a respected member of the Sanhedrin. And they meet at the body of Christ. Joseph asked Pilate if he could have the body. Pilate agreed. And it's interesting because I wonder if they knew that each other were following Jesus. Nicodemus, again, comes in the middle of the night, doesn't want anyone to know. And Joseph, we haven't heard anything of Joseph before this point. But they anoint Jesus' body with 75 pounds of myrrh and aloe. They place him in a brand new tomb near a garden. I saw what they thought was the garden tomb. We don't know. And it's amazing that these two powerful men have hidden their faith before, but now at the cross they find each other and have the courage to stand out in public and do this thing. Oh boy. So looking ahead, this is not the end. This story has more to go, and we're going to hear about this. John wrote this so we can believe, and we're going to see what it is that's going to happen. What I'm going to meditate on this week is that idea that there are people who hide their faith. It's easy too, and it might not be us all the time. Everyone knows I'm a Christian who knows me. I make it very public. I go to church. I do Christian things. I speak at Christian colleges. But there are times where maybe we're quiet about it. Maybe we're sneaking out in the middle of the night like Nicodemus, or maybe we're not even mentioned at all like Joseph. But there are times where we don't feel as bold in the faith as we should, that we're hidden disciples of God. And we don't want to wait for that tombside moment to come out and show our faith. And I'm going to definitely meditate about that. And what I'm going to think about is this moment of behold the man, this suffering. They tried to strip him of every dignity. They tried to mock him and just destroy him in every way you can destroy a man. And yet he's majestic. And yet he is our Lord. And yet at the very end of everything, he is caring for his mother, and in such a beautiful way. He has illustrated that the way of this cross and finishing the thing that we could never finish ourselves, giving us a gift that all we have to do is stop denying the gift, allowing us so that we may believe and believe fully in this, and to give us that courage to stand in faith. And what I'm going to share with others is that idea of telestai, paid in full, stamped. This is completed. I don't know how many people would turn away if someone came and said, you know what, Jill, I'm going to pay all your debts. And you say, no, I don't really want you to pay my debts because I don't even believe you existed. Stop denying the gift. We are paid for. We have been stamped completed. And all we have to do is stop rejecting it. The cross is not the end, but is the beginning where we are freed from every type of debt we have. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching and listening. Remember, there's a website, thebibleinsmallsteps.com. That is where this podcast has a blog article and is a WordPress site that talks about this chapter and what we talk about in this podcast. Please leave a comment on YouTube. Email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Love to hear from you. Thanks so much and have a great day.